give you a real brief overview, we were looking at ways to streamline our aftermarket business and make things a little bit faster, able to close work orders basically within the same day or the next day, get parts out to our techs quicker, all of those things. So we wanted to streamline. We were looking for something that we could buy off the shelf. Looked at that. We didn't really see anything that was going to suit what we thought was going to be suitable for our needs. So we hooked up with Catapult, got a few demos, and then we just decided to proceed down this route. So they helped us develop some things initially. Frank went down for some a week training down at their site, and then he came back and with kind of a service flow of what we were looking for, helped us develop it in conjunction with ongoing meetings with our technicians. So we'll show you a brief overview of what we've done, and then we can get into the specifics from there if you guys have any questions. So Frank, I'm going to let you take over. Okay.
So what we did was we created different workbenches for our different departments. So we've got our field techs who have one set of apps available, or launchers available to them. We've got our service admins who have another set, and the two work hand in hand. One of the nice things with Catapult is that it's device independent. So I can set it up on the iPads for the techs, and our service admins are accessing Catapult just using a web browser on a desktop. So the items that we've made available for our techs, we've got some simple launchers, such as branch warehouse, which shows just our branch locations and contact information in case the tech is going to a different branch or something. Then we've got the staff directory, which is tied into our CRM, and that's just a live update of all our employees. Every line item, if you tap on it, you can drill down and get further information.
Which is very different from what would happen. Our technicians would get all of the staff directories on their cell phones. That would be static information. This is now, the moment it's updated in our database, it's updated to them. So it's always current information.
The My Van inventory, that's a live listing of the tech's van inventory. That is directly tied in with our soft-based system on this end. So any changes, when a part is added to a work order, it automatically comes out of that tech's van inventory. Whether that part is added by somebody in soft-based in the office here, or the tech adds the part to his work order directly himself, his inventory count is automatically updated, and it puts the onus on the tech to make sure that his inventory is correct. If on his van inventory, if his on-hand quantity was 0, but his branch had some on hand, that particular line item would be highlighted in yellow as an indicator to him that he just needs to stop by the office and replenish that quantity. Once again, you can tap on a line item and it drills down for further information. On this screen, it would also list everybody else who had that same part on hand. For this, I'm using my van inventory because we're dealing with live data here. And there's nobody, and so my van just contains cell phones, iPads, things like that. So there's nobody else who would have those parts. So the bottom portion just has my entry, but if other people had that part, they would also be listed there.
Plus a map.
And if I swipe to the right, that lists a map of where all the vans are located, so I can visually see who is closest to me with that part if I don't have one on hand. And if I tap on that person's van, it will list the quantity they have as well as their cell number, so I can phone them and verify, are they actually at the location where the map is showing them. Because our map locations are tied to status updates. They're not live GPS locations.
On the van inventory, we showed their min, their max, and the list price. So if a customer is ever asking for pricing on any of the parts, the technician can answer that right then and there. So hopefully they can sell the part while they're there as opposed to getting it quoted.
The connection here is a little slow, and that's because I'm on a throttled Wi-Fi connection. Normally, if I was on just a data connection, this would be much faster. So the work order WIP, that's where the tech is going to spend the vast majority of amount of his time. This is a list of the work orders that he's currently dispatched on. I've color-coded them to be similar to traffic light. If it's green, if it's white, he's never done any work on it. If it's green, he's either en route or on site. If it's yellow, he's left that job, but he has not completed that job. And if it's red, he's completed that job, all his paperwork is done, and it's just waiting to be invoiced. This allows the tech to visually see, does he have completed work orders that have not been invoiced yet, and the onus is on him to clean those red items up. If an item is red on his WIP for a longer period of time, he can then go to the service admin and say, hey, why is this here? What's the problem? What do we need to address?
Typically, technicians don't want to have a lot on their WIP, so if it's red, they're constantly phoning the invoice clerk to say, why haven't you invoiced this? I want it done. So it helped us keep our billing as quickly as possible.
Sorry.
That has a serial number.
So I'm going to pull the top work order here. So this replaced the paper copy of the work order that we were printing off and giving to the mechanics. All the comments from the work order are automatically populated in the comment section. Typically a tech, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to hit the red button at the top which says en route. That's going to capture his GPS location as well as the time for billing purposes. Once he arrives on site, he's just going to hit that button again. And once again, it's going to capture his location and time for billing purposes. In the top portion, we've got the standard work order information, the customer's location, and the basic unit information. If he's going to location, he's not sure where it is, he can just go menu, map, and it's going to show him a map of where he's going. He can then just tap on the destination, tap on where he is, and just like a standard Google map on the very top, it's going to show the distance to the location, multiple routes, and the estimated time for each of those routes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Okay. First of all, has anyone done introductions from the Midco group here?
No.
Nope.
You have myself, I'm Ken Black, I'm the CFO. We've also got Terry Rowley in the room, our controller, and William Berry, who is our IT guy. My question, did you guys convert over to iPads with your drivers when you did this?
No, initially our drivers were all 100% paper. So this was an initial implementation for us. We weren't converting one digital device for another with the mechanics.
Okay. Just curious if you found that those were easier to use because of the screen size, things like that.
One of the reasons we went with the iPads as opposed to an Android device or things like that is, one, the security of the device, and two was that all of our techs previously did have iPhones, and this allowed just the sharing of apps if necessary without having to repurchase an existing app.
Okay.
They're currently all using iPad 2s. As of yesterday, the iPad 2 was discontinued, so we're going to be going forward with iPad Pros.
Okay.
The other thing is all of our devices are secured using AirWatch MDM, and they're secured through the Apple deployment program, so that if a device is lost, it becomes a brick for anybody except us. If they try to reactivate it, our company name is automatically appeared on the screen, and there's no way to bypass that because it's imprinted from the factory Apple before it's shipped to us.
Okay.
We had an iPad stole them within the first week of implementation, and we got it back the very next day because of that.
Yeah, because when the person who stole it took it to a store to have it activated, and as soon as the store saw it, they realized it was a corporate device, not just a consumer iPad, and that facilitated them contacting the police and saying, hey.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. So on the top portion there, you'll notice it says that below the lift info, it says hour meter update required. One of the things we require is an hour meter reading. In the past, we've had problems, with consistency. Techs weren't doing it, or they were just copying a previous work order, that kind of thing. So now they cannot complete this job until that hour meter reading is done. The other thing that we allow them to do is the lift info on the top, and one of the first things they do when they go to the site is they verify the serial number of the unit they're working on. If they're working on, say it's an on-call work order where there is no serial number entered, when they get to the customer, they can enter the serial number themselves, but we've placed the restriction that it has to be a serial number that we already have in our system, and that's just a consistency check. If they want to enter a serial number that is not already in our system, that has to be done by our admin personnel in the office, and that's strictly for quality control. So if I were to go to menu, these are the different functions that we do allow the techs to do. So I hit update serial number. I can put in a partial serial number if, there was a lot of units at that site, and then I would just hit find, and it would list all the serial numbers there. Beside the serial number, there is a barcode option, and that connects with the camera directly on the iPad. We currently don't barcode the units, but we are planning on doing that for things like rental units and that going forward. The nice thing with this is the barcode reader is capable of reading all standard barcode formats. And then behind the scenes, I specify the tables within our database that I want to reference. For our parts barcode scanner, I've got it set to look both the part number, and the UPC symbol, and the description for a match on that barcode. So we could have a generic barcode, and all it says, is 10W30, and it would come up and search for that. So hitting cancel on that. If I can find, it lists all the customers' serial numbers at that site. So I just tap on the unit I want to use, and it automatically updates the work order, not only on the tech's iPad, but because this is live data connected to our office, the instant the tech changes this on his iPad, it's changed on the work order in our office as well. If I were to try and complete this job right now, and I go job complete, I hit continue, it's going to come up with a series of errors which are deliberately implemented by me. They're quality control checks. This particular error tells the mechanic that he has not done any check sheets on this work order, that he's required to do some documentation before completing a job, and that he's required to update that hour meter before completing this job. So it's not going to let him go on to the next job until this is done properly. So to update the hour meter, I just click on Update Hour Meter, enter the reading that I want to use, I hit Continue, and then now that red warning goes away and the hour meter reading is populated in its place. The other thing I can see if I go...
Can you bring up a serial number of a forklift? That's a math.
Oh, sorry.
Since we've got history.
Serial number. And let me just go 7FG find. Grab that one.
Just want to make sure that we've got history. Because it is live data, we're careful as to what units that we're putting any history on when we're showing it.
Yeah, these particular units that I'm working with right now are old abandoned units, so I can mess up their data and nobody cares. So from here, I can, if there was PM parts that are required when a PM is done, if I were to hit on PM parts, it would list all the parts required to do that PM. I can also go in and I can see service history, and it's going to list every invoice ever done on this unit, going back to when we started using SoftBase, which is 2002. In the lower portion, that would be any Catavolt documents that we've created going back to when we started using Catavolt.
So the top portion is old invoices since 2002. The bottom is since Catavolt. And the bottom is the document history, which would be a service report, a PM, anything that the technician would have signed and sent to the customer. That is stagnant. Once it's saved, it cannot be changed, but obviously the invoices, you might change the wording and whatnot. That would be in the top portion.
And also from this screen, if he wants to look at a past invoice, he just taps on that line item, and it's going to pull up that past invoice for him. This gives techs instant access to the complete service history of that unit.
And you have it color-coded when it's history. It's a different color, so they know that they're in history.
Okay. How much are you guys utilizing this at the beginning or the ending of a day for the techs to look at what their next day looks like and to verify what parts they would anticipate needing for what they're going to be working on that are on the truck?
Well, typically we make sure that the dispatchers ensure that they have the parts available for the next day. So
your dispatcher's doing that, okay?
Yeah, the dispatchers are doing that. They finish their paperwork the day that they're done, or by the time their job is done. So basically, by the time they go into a next job, all the parts that we had already thought we were going to have to be there, our dispatchers make sure they're either in their van or they had picked them up.
Okay. How much productivity time have you guys seen increase from the result of this efficiencies, would you?
Well, I would say that our billable time has probably increased, probably by about almost about 8%. Yeah, so we've had better billable time, less lost time.
Okay.
So, sorry, I just had somebody come in and speak to me.
That's okay.
Okay, so back to the items that we allow the mechanic to do. The other thing we give them access to is a complete parts history for that unit. That's useful in cases, where the customer says, but you just replaced that part a month ago. The tech can actually go in and see, in actuality, how long ago was that part replaced. But you can also see, our related parts being replaced, so you can see if there's a pattern of something else that might be failing.
Brushes, we replaced brushes, and finally you need a motor. Yeah.
And the same idea, taps on a line item. Sorry, this one isn't a drill down. Update the PO number. If he's at the customer site, if a work order requires a PO, the customer gives him the PO, he can enter that PO directly on the work order himself. There's also a view comments option. Instead of having to scroll to read the comments, if there's a lot of comments, he can pull it up on this screen, and it's a lot easier for him to read.
We're like everybody else. We have aging workforce, so you need to make it legible.
The clone service report option, we created that for one specific mechanic, and in the case he was a dock guy and he was doing a whole bunch of docks. This allowed him to do a generic service report entry to begin with. He could then copy that to the 20 or 30 PMs that he's going to be doing, and then fill in the rest of the data for each one. It's really an isolated thing, and he hardly ever uses that as well. So the signature required option, that is a list of all the documents that the tech has that are not signed. One of the things that's required to complete a job is a signature. So if he gets the message saying, you have unsigned documents, he can just simply go to this screen. In the case of, say, he's got 5 PMs, instead of having to go to each work order and have them sign off on each work order individually, they can sign off from this one screen directly. And as they select each document and sign off on it, that document will then disappear off his list, and he can move on to the next one.
This might sound like a stupid question, but do you guys have any problems with the techs? They're out there working on a piece of equipment and their hands get greasy, dirty. Using the iPad, does that become problematic at all?
All of our iPads are in OtterBoxes.
Okay.
And we've never had a problem of a screen becoming unreadable because of that. We have had a few OtterBoxes where we had to open the case and clean it, but that's the extent of it. And we've only had, probably in the last 7 years, even with iPhones, we've only had the case of one iPhone ever being dropped in oil.
Yeah. So
I was wondering, even with fingerprints and stuff, that not registering a fingerprint or something because of... No, the OtterBox does an excellent job of protecting the iPad from stuff like that, and seems to work just fine. Okay.
So we allow the techs to add parts to the work order that are out of his inventory only. So if there's a van down the street that has the part he needs, the inventory transfer will have to be done in the office here, and that's just to ensure the consistency of the inventory in each van. But as long as the inventory is in his van, he just clicks on the part number, selects the part, and it will automatically populate the top form. If he was entering more than one part, he would select the part, the repeat button is green, he hits continue, adds that part to the work order, automatically reduces his inventory count by the quantity that he did, and then brings him back to this screen so he can then enter another part. If he wants to change the quantity, he can change the quantity. I put a block in there, he cannot add a quantity greater than what he has on hand. In the case of fluids, I do round the fluid quantities, so 1.5 is entered, it rounds it to 2. And if it's the final part, just turn the repeat button off, hit continue, and takes it back to the original screen. If a part was added in the office onto the work order, he gets to the job and realizes, hey, I don't need to use this part. We do not allow the techs to remove parts from the work order, but we allow them to flag the part for removal. And to do that, he just holds his finger on the line item, taps on flag part for removal. That will then, on his iPad, it's going to flag it as a red item, and there's a comment there, removal pending. On the work order screen on this end, I've flagged it in the section field so that that part is moved to its own section on the work order, and it becomes very obvious for the admin staff to see that this part needs to be removed from the work order.
And we're like most other companies, we will not remove it until the technician has returned it. If it was from their van inventory, the parts people will remove the part, put it back into their van inventory, but if it had to come back to the warehouse, we don't remove it until we physically have it in a resaleable condition.
If he just needed the quantity change instead of the part being removed, same idea. He just flags the part for quantity change. On his service report, he's going to make a note of what that quantity change needs to be. When they go to close the work order on this end, they'll see that a quantity change is required. They'll look at the service report and make the required quantity change. If I swipe to the right, that's a list of the documents that we currently have available for the tech. And these documents are fillable PDFs. The top portion is just like a filing cabinet. He's going to grab his blank documents out of that filing cabinet and populate his open document list down below. So for this job, I'm going to need a service report, so I'll grab the service report. And I'm going to need something called an image document, so I'll grab an image document. And those are now down below for my job. I've set it so the field level risk assessment, which is a safety assessment, that is automatically created for every tech the second he hits on site. It's a WCB requirement, or Workers' Compensation Board requirement to fill out that form. I have that form automatically there. So he doesn't have to go and, he can say, oh, well, I forgot to put it into my list. No, it's there automatically. For our service reports, this is the field level risk assessment.
Yeah, but it pre-populates the work order number, the customer name. Every time that they open up another document, everything is already pre-populated with the hour meter, customer name, work order number, serial number, so they don't have to keep repeating that.
So the service report, he just taps on the check boxes that he wants to tick off. In the technician's remarks column, just taps in there, and he can type with his keyboard, or he can also use the text-to-speech option, and that will just type as he's talking. In the lower portion of the document, on the left-hand side are the parts copied from the work order, because this document is going to be left with the customer. So the parts used are copied off the work order. If a part's flagged for deletion, it doesn't copy onto this document. And on the right-hand side is where the tech is going to enter parts that he's used that were not out of his van inventory. So if he had to buy a part locally, he's going to make a note of that here. And then below that is a couple of option boxes to tick off estimate required. If he ticks off those boxes, we use the server email to automatically send an email to our parts department, alerting them that a request is coming for an estimate. Beside that are follow-up required by CSS or equipment. If he ticks that off, when he completes this document, an email is automatically going to go to the sales rep saying a follow-up is required, and in that email is also going to be a copy of all the comments that he's entered on this work order.
Again, with the work order number, the customer name, and all the comments.
Yeah, so when the sales rep gets this email, he's not scratching his head going, why do I have to call this customer? He's going to have all the required information there, and then when he's actually ready to deal with the customer, he can then pull up any further information he requires. The bottom of the document, signature capture, as well as the name capture. And when he's done, he just hits save. Goes back to his document list. And the other document that I created was an image document. Prior to the creation of this document, what would happen is, there was customer damage on a forklift. Well, the mechanic would take a photograph of that damage. He would then email that photograph to service admin. That service admin then may email that photograph to the rental department. And before you knew it, there was 5 different copies of this email sitting around. Nobody could access each other's email, of course. And if you needed to find that email 6 months from now, good luck. Because you had to try and remember, well, which tech emailed it or who received that email. And this allows us to take a photograph of the damage and tie that photograph to the serial number with a date stamp so that 6 years from now somebody can say, hey, can I see the photograph that was done of this truck on this day? And they can find it within seconds. Works
great for warranty parts as well. Pictures of the damage.
Yeah, for the warranty, it has cut down significantly on the warranty processing time. To take a photograph, just simply tap on the square. I can choose an existing photograph or hit capture. Starts up the camera. Take the picture, use photo, throws it into the document. Besides that, I've got a spot for some comments.
Or, again, talk to type.
Yeah, or you can use text-to-speech. Signature on an image document we've made optional. There's certain circumstances where you want a signature, certain when you don't. When that's done, you hit save.
That's got to be nice on your mail server, not sending all those emails and loading up the hard drive.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to find afterwards.
And the second I add that image to that document, it's now retrievable by somebody here in the office. So the person, especially in our northern branch, the person taking the photograph may be a 6-hour drive away from the office. And here they just have instant access to that photograph.
It's great for looking for parts too. If you've got an off-brand and you want to send a picture to the parts department, it was very, very handy.
What was your acceptance of your text when you went to this the system?
It was phenomenal, quite frankly.
Was it?
But it was, and I think because we included them in the development of it, and when we get into the pay, their biggest concern always is, how am I going to get paid? How is this going to affect me? So when they got to be involved in the development of it, the acceptance was great. If you tried to take this away from our technicians now, they would be absolutely appalled.
Yeah, we have technicians here who have worked for other companies that have had mobile solutions. And one of the comments that I just heard last week was the previous place the guy worked, their mobile solution had different applications, but they were all based in different databases, and none of that information flowed through to each other. One of the nice things with this is I can tie the information behind the scenes to all of our data. I can tie our invoicing to our CRM. So any information they need can be put through in the one application.
How much time did you spend training them, just a ballpark?
The training is actually very short. It's a one-day training that we do for them, and generally it's even only a half a day. And usually how it works is there's that initial training. I printed up a manual for them as well. And on the last page of that manual, I've done on a typical day work through, because everything is point and click in this system, and 99.9% of what they're going to do is going to be the same every day for every job. So they just follow that sheet. They go, okay, go on site, go on route, go on site, check the serial number, check the hour meter. So I've just did a walkthrough for them. And usually the second day after the training, I'll have some questions. By 3 days after that training, I don't get any questions at all. The only questions I get now from mechanics are, what was my password? I forgot it.
Yeah.
So once all the paperwork is done,
Frank, were you the only person that went through the extended training?
yes.
Okay. Do you think one person is sufficient?
Yeah. I've done all the the in-house development for this myself.
Okay.
So when I do design something, there is a team collaboration on what we want to see, where we want it to go. But at the end of the day, I then take that and I go off and then I just develop what they want.
Okay.
And all along, we've morphed it from the very first day that we started. It's morphed in. But every time a technician had come up with, when we first rolled it out with it, what we did is we rolled it out with our first batch of technicians, about 6 guys. We had them go through it, kind of work out the bugs. We would meet with them once a week and say, okay, what do you like? What do you want? What do you need? And so I think we did that for about a month and a half, meeting with them. And then we pretty much got everything that we wanted. Frank made all the adjustments that they thought would be useful, and we all agreed on. And so then then we would bring on the next batch of about 6 technicians, and then we met with them probably for about 3 weeks. And then the next batch of technicians, we only met with them once or twice, and then after that we just roll it out, and because everything that they wanted was pretty much there.
Yeah, there was a difference in the app functionality between what I did when I first did the training and what I do now, and that when we do the payroll, I'll show you the difference between the two. And a lot of that has just come from my familiarity now with what Catapult is actually capable of, and how to get it to accomplish those things.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Frank and Megan, this is Kevin from Lipto.
Hi, Kevin.
You briefly discussed about keeping track of technicians' time. I assume there's no time tickets or paper documents that way?
Yeah. We'll get on to how we handle the time right after the WIP. There's a whole module for a launcher for the time and how it's handled.
So realize it's capturing the time. It captures their time by their statuses when they're on the work order. So the first thing that they do is they select en route, on site, either left for parts or job incomplete that stops the time. Then it would capture it again when they went back en route. So all of that is capturing the time to that work order. So the technicians no longer have to realize how much time they spent on a job. And as Frank said, we'll show you a little bit more when we get into that, because sometimes there is some manipulation that the tech needs to make on their time. And it could be, we have a lot of travel that we have to deal with, and so we could have a technician driving 4 hours, and he's going to be doing 3 jobs once he gets into that general vicinity. He's going to split that travel up. So we still allow them to do that. So we'll show you that very shortly.
Yeah, so one of the things I've just done is I've completed this job by hitting the button in the top right corner, and I went job complete, and as soon as I went job complete, one of the first things you'll notice is that red button is no longer there. We've done this so that when they go out of a work order and they come back into it, and you'll notice the status now changes to red. When they go back into it, they can no longer make changes. You notice all my open documents are gone. When I hit job complete, that completes those documents and moves them over to history. One of the other things it does is it takes the comments off the service reports and puts it into the work order for us. So there's no data entry required on the parts of our admin staff to get the technician's comments on the billing material for the customer. All they have to do is now go into the work order and do editing as opposed to data entry. And on that side there's been a huge labor savings.
Yeah.
We originally had 2 people doing that job in our main office, and now this has allowed us to we had 1 person leave our company, and so we've reallocated the second person that was doing the data entry to the dispatch where the person who left was. So we haven't had to actually, there's been no downsizing on the part of the company.
Reallocation of
but
talent, yeah.
We've been able to reallocate people to where they are more efficient, and we haven't had to replace those positions that we reallocated. Because, of course, when you have, when you tell people you're going to be doing things electronically, you're going to be taking out steps, the first thing that crosses people's minds are, what's going to happen with my job? And that was one of the things we made clear to them right from the beginning, is that when we did this, nobody would be getting laid off. Is that, any savings, yes, we're not going to hire new people if anybody leaves, but at the same time, we weren't going to lay anybody off as a result of it. And that was part of the adoption process. You don't want people afraid of the device. You don't want people resisting it. And if people suspect, well, this could affect me working here in the future, you're going to have a lot more resistance.
We are now able to do more proactive business as opposed to reactive business, because it's giving us more free time that we could reallocate the talent. And as you all know, this is a customer service industry, so you better make sure that you can be proactive as best as possible. And
that's what, that's one of the things that by automating these processes, it frees up those reactive, repetitive processes to be put towards proactive activity. So that's the mechanic's whip. Every time he hits that status button, it's capturing his time. So now we're going to get into how we handle the pay. This, of course, was a big thing with the mechanics, is how is this going to affect how I'm getting paid. So everything we did right from the beginning was very transparent for them to show that we're not, altering your pay in any way. Initially, we went with a fillable PDF, and the primary reason for doing that was we needed a pay structure in here somehow, and that was the fastest way to get this thing out to the mechanics, was just by doing the fillable PDF. So when I go into the timesheets, to create a timesheet for the end of the day, I go menu, create timesheet. That's going to look at all the work orders that I've worked on for the day. It's going to look at the status update times and automatically calculate the time that I spent on that job. Because this was a rush job, the calculations on the time are not accurate. So we've allowed the techs on the right to alter that time to what the correct value is.
So what it would do is it captured their starting time, their ending time, and the only thing that it was missing is when they left for parts or job incomplete, and then when they would go back on, the individual time it wouldn't be able to add or subtract the time that they were off of the job. Frank has since created a new timesheet that we're rolling out.
So the tech, he goes onto the right-hand side there. He corrects the reading how he needs it. He can then hit save. In the top right, it will recalculate the total for him so he can see if he's exceeded his 8 hours for the day or if his total is wrong. If it goes menu, edit, he ticks off submit. When he hits save, that pay sheet is now submitted for processing and will appear on our admin screen for her to process the next morning. On these particular sheets, we set it up so they have to create their, excuse me, they have to create their timesheet at the end of the day. They cannot create a timesheet for the previous day, which is why they only have the option that says create timesheet. And what that is it eliminated those people who put off putting in their timesheets. So now, there's no reason that payroll can't be done on time instantly.
At 11:59, after that, they cannot capture the data from what they did that day, so they would then have to manually hand in a timesheet, and typically their tail would be between their legs, and you don't want to have to hand in a manual timesheet more than once.
And this was probably the hardest part of the adoption phase. Because we had so many people who were in the habit of doing their timesheets the next day or doing it at the end of the week, so they were constantly forgetting to do it at the end of the day. And it took a few months for people to get out of those bad habits and into the habit of doing their timesheet daily.
We're probably like most others. The technicians used to do a lot of their paperwork at the end of the day, and they'd have to remember what they did at that particular job. And so quite often you'd have a service report that wasn't really indicative of the work that they did because they couldn't remember everything. Now they have to finish their service reports, all of their paperwork while they're on site because they have to send it via PDF to the customer right then and there. And at the end of the day, they have to do their timesheet. So it forced everybody to work within the parameters that we had always set, but they were able to, they were able to manipulate it before. Now they can't.
Yeah. So this particular, fillable PDF, this was done basically the first week we were using Catapult, and it was, just a way to quickly get something out there. And I'm going to just show you. One of the other nice things with Catapult is I can have a separate area where I can work on these launchers I can fine-tune them. I can then assign these launchers to specific techs instead of rolling it out to the whole company at once. Get that launcher working exactly how I want it, and then I can roll it out to everybody. So the new timesheet that I'm working on, it automatically creates the timesheets as the tech is doing his job. There's no longer a requirement to create it at the end of the day. It's automatically creating it for him. And of course, my time calculations are now 100% accurate. So instead of a fillable PDF, they have a more interactive screen now. One of the options, or one of the things requested by the mechanic was the ability to view the work order. A month from now, the tech might be looking at his pay sheet and go, well, I don't remember that job. Or even at the end of the day, he's got multiple work orders he's working on, and he's trying to remember, well, should I have allocated 5 hours to this or 5 hours to that? He can pull up each work order from here without having to go back and forth between everything. I also allow him to split work orders or split the hours on a work order. So if there's, he's doing 3 PMs for a customer, and total he's accumulated the, so we'll just go split work orders. He can then split or specify the time that he wants to allocate between the work orders, and it would automatically evenly split those hours up among his work orders.
So are you still currently having them use a fillable PDF where they're manually basically creating that?
They're still currently using the fillable PDF. There's some behind-the-scenes stuff on this screen that I haven't completed yet, because what I'm going to be doing with this is I'm taking it one step further from just a pay sheet. As soon as the mechanic does, fills out his form, the hours should be correct, but if he needs to adjust them, he can adjust them. And then once he hits submit timesheet, this will then automatically go to the service admin. If he exceeds his the time that he's clocked by more than a half an hour, instead of going to the service admin, it's automatically routed to the service manager for review. The service manager can then decide, is he going to approve this extra time or not? If he approves it, it then gets routed back to the service admin. If he declines it, it gets routed back to the mechanic. And from the service admin side, on their screen, I've got a button that if they look at the work order, they approve the hours, all they have to do is click on the button that says post. It's going to automatically take the time off of the text timesheet and post that directly onto the work order for billing. So there's no more manual entry of the hours onto the work order either. So that's the part I'm still fine-tuning behind the scenes for that step, which is why the techs aren't using it yet. But once it is rolled out to the techs, it's an automatic process. As soon as the tech is hitting en route on site, it's an automatic process of creating that timesheet for him. He just has to look at it. If he's happy, if there's no anomalies he needs to adjust, he hits submit. It goes to the service admin. If there's no anomalies there they need to adjust, they hit post, and it's all done.
What we think
are you automating? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Are you automating that allocation of en route time then, or is that going to be up to them to do?
No, it is by their status. It's the only time they would ever have to adjust if they wanted to reallocate their time is if they had long travel and then they were going to allocate all that travel to the 3 jobs. They really shouldn't have to allocate or readjust their time because it's all captured by their statuses. But if you don't allow for some manipulation for those what ifs, then it becomes this doesn't work, and then you're going to have that struggle with the technician. We know that there's got to be some, but it should be very, very minimal, and that's why we didn't actually bring it up where they can adjust it willy-nilly just for the heck of it. They would have to go in, this one they're going to be going into it. Now they're just seeing the total labor hours to that job. If there was nothing unique on that day, they just hit submit, and off they go. For the posting portion of it, In the Lower Mainland, we have about 32 technicians, and our billings clerk does all the labor entry as well. She figures that this should reduce about 3 hours a day of her time if we can get this, when we get this posting to payroll and posting to the quarters at the same time. That will be significant for us.
Yeah, so what on the status updates, I'm capturing the travel time separately, but on the text payroll sheet, it just shows it as the time he's claiming. Because we don't bill separately from travel time. If we were billing separately, then I would obviously have it separated on this screen for the text, but because we don't bill separately, it's just a total that he would be editing.
It's very, very helpful for us to capture the travel time, the repair time, because when customers are always complaining, well, he signed in here, you know, he was only on site for an hour. Well, it took him 2 hours to get there. We've got that behind the scenes. We can look at that. The customer doesn't get it because it's all in their lump sum labor. But we're capturing all that data so we can see what the tech had to do. If he's off-site, we know that he had to go off-site to pick up parts and come back. That time is still billed to the customer.
Yeah, and then once I have all the back end tied in, then I'll also be doing rounding of hours. You know, obviously we're not going to pay somebody 0.49 hours, so we'll be rounding that to even half hour.
Hi, Frank and Megan. This is Brian from Norlift of Oregon.
Hi, Brian.
I've got a question about, do you make any provisions for if the technician needs to make an entry for an internal code, like vehicle maintenance or something like that?
Yes, we do.
So like you're talking about like on his for pay?
Right, so it'd be unbillable time.
Yes.
So if I go back to his timesheet here, from menu, I've got the option for him to add a work order number. So he can then add the work order number for his unbillable time to his pay sheet. So,
and that would then go for review automatically. We also assign a technician a blank work order. So if they ever get an after-hours call and they have to go out, they can capture their time on there. As soon as they finish that work order, a duplicate gets opened up, so they get another work order. So we wanted to try and capture as much as we could so that it was always being used off of this system as opposed to any manual. They also know that they can phone the service manager or myself. We can always open up work orders and just assign it to them on their iPad. And the way that we do that, we tie it into SoftBase. We just assign their van number to it. It automatically goes to their iPad.
And Megan, does that blank work order, when they mark job complete on that, or I guess is that blank work order for capturing, say they start work early in the morning before your admins are in the office, and they work on 5 different trucks, do they put all their time and everything on that, and then the service admin figures it out after the fact, or does that thing keep flipping and a new blank work order is open for each one automatically?
No, I think the work order would have to be closed internally before it creates another one. They would put it all on there. Typically, our techs would phone in. Most of the guys would phone and ask for a work order number. And our service manager, he likes to get up at the crack of dawn. He doesn't mind if he gets a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning. He thinks that's normal. So they can phone him then. Don't call me at 4 o'clock.
and there's also for, you know, if we go to adjust work order hours. So say the mechanic is claiming, or he wants to bank his overtime. Well, we have a separate work order for that. And we don't want everybody phoning in, say, well, what's the banked overtime work order number? What's the bank over work order number? So I put a flag on here. If they turn that on, when he submits his time for the service admin, it's going to be highlighted that they're banking time, and the service admin can then just populate the work order number for them.
Are they going to have the ability to add their own work order number?
Yes.
Yes. So sometimes we'll have 2 technicians assigned to one job. You know, we're doing some Calmar reach stackers or whatever, so we have 2 technicians. It's originally assigned to 1 technician. The other technician will have to add that work order number onto their pay sheet. And that would be in, again, menu, add a work order number, correct?
Yeah, so the top one there is a case of I manually added that in. I wasn't assigned on that work order. I didn't clock any time, so I just highlighted, select added a work order number, typed in my work order number, and then added my time.
But whenever there's any manual manipulation, that's when it goes for review. So that's why we want to make sure that the service manager has control. He knows what's going on. What used to happen is it would go to a service admin. If they're claiming the overtime or more than what should be, they had the ability to approve it. We said, no, it should be the service manager that needs to approve it, so that's why it's going for review to the service manager. Anytime they have to add, anytime that their total allocated time is more than their captured time, it automatically goes to the service manager.
So if I were to put in here, you know, I'm going to claim 4 hours extra. And I go submit, it pops up with a message saying that the hours billed exceeds the number of hours recorded, and that it's being submitted for review. Just go back to their WIP here. We also do our rental check-in and check-outs on the iPads as well. For the rental check-in, I'll just pull up a number here.
Yeah.
I'll go to the results first because that's where I'll get a number from.
Yeah.
R4448. So this allows them to see the rental inspections for any unit. It shows, well, 4448 failed. I can tap on that, and I can see why it failed the inspection, as well as, they can attach photographs to that inspection. One of the things, so when they're doing the inspection, go R8, continue. I've done it so it automatically checks what the last inspection type was. So if the last inspection was a check-in, when they create the checkout, it automatically creates a checkout if the last one was done a check-in, and vice versa, it automatically creates a check-in if the last one done was a check-out. Initially, because some units were out, some units were in, it would default to a check-out. So if the unit was coming in and it was doing a checkout, they just have to do that initial checkout to bring it back in sync with what the unit was actually doing.
Each of our check-in checkouts are based on the ITA class. So if it's class 1, 2, or 3, you're going to see some different things because you've got batteries and chargers that you need to start recording that information. You don't need that on your class 4s and 5s. So Frank's got it where we put in the ITA class under our model group, so it looks up model group and it brings up the appropriate check-in, check-out inspection requirements.
Yeah, so on the lower left where it says inspection items, that list is going to be different whether it's an electric unit or an internal combustion unit. And so they're not, dealing with items that are not of any relevance. The other thing is that in order to complete an item, they just hold their finger on it, and it comes up with the options to pass or fail, and they can also attach a photograph with that pass or fail. When they do a photograph, they can also attach a comment to that photograph as to why it passed or failed. And once they complete that line item then drops to the bottom of the list, and then puts the next item at the top, so they don't have to constantly keep scrolling what is the next item they have to deal with. I've made it so that certain fields are mandatory on electric units, the battery serial number. If they don't complete those, they can't complete the check-in. And if they notice customer damage, I put a button on the top there. They can report customer damage. That will automatically send an email to the rental department advising them that the unit coming in has been reported as damaged. And it's just an extra heads up. They don't have to keep going to their screen to see what came in today. They'll also have in their email the items of critical importance.
Will it have photos referencing what it looked like when it checked out?
Yeah, so if I go back to the rental results, so we can even go to one that passed. They haven't finished that one. But there's an example. It's an inspection still in process, and so in the very top beside result, I've flagged the word incomplete in big bold red to let you know that this is still an ongoing inspection. So I go down to an older one, and you can see the photographs in the lower right, as well as in the top. It says what failed. So I just tap on a photograph. I can get a larger, and if I tap on it, I can go even larger still. And of course, I can zoom in as well.
Is that picture exportable where you can send it to a customer and show them the damage?
Yes. Our rental department has a rental or an inspection results form that they can print off, and then they can send that as a PDF to the customer or a paper copy if they need it. So in a nutshell, that's how we're using Catapult. Any other questions?
Talk about this admin screen. What does that look like?
Oh.
It's fabulous. I had a customer call me yesterday, and we had to do an inspection report for them for a lease return. And she misplaced her copy, and it was something that we had sent to her. It was a specific form that they wanted filled out on the lease company's paperwork. So quite often, somebody would do the invoice, but we wouldn't send a copy. We'd send a copy and then try and find our own copy. I was able to bring it up because I had the work order number. I could bring it up and send her the copy within probably 2 minutes. It's extremely handy.
So, close that dashboard there.
Yeah.
So this is the service admin's screen. On the left-hand side, they can pull up the timesheets, they can pull up the individual work orders, and they just tap on it, and it pulls up a list of those work orders. On the right, there's various filter options for them, so they can filter down on what they're looking at. They tap on a work order, and it pulls up that work order's information, or the check sheets on that work order. So this is the service report. They can then export this to a PDF and email it or print it if they need to.
Do you guys have any intention of building any kind of business intelligence tools out of this, where you can do comparison between effectiveness of different techs, things like that?
Yes and no. One of the chain of events that's going to be happening in the next little while is that I'll be finishing off the payroll function, but I'm not rolling it out immediately because I'm pretty well gone all of April on holidays, and the last thing I want to be doing is implementing a new process the day before I walk out the door and saying, you're on your own.
Chaos on its own, yeah.
And so after that, we're then putting our sales team on Catapult. So we have various functionalities that they've asked for. And then once our sales department is fully on Catapult, then we can then proceed with different analysis tools.
Okay.
We're really limited to our imagination as to what we want to do. There are, we want to barcode all our parts, we want to barcode all of our equipment. somebody else was saying that they wanted to have it where a customer could scan their equipment and that would send a service request into us. So whatever our imagination dreams up, we can do. So we just have to keep thinking about what's the next thing that we want to present to our customer.
And one of the other things I did for the admin, because I wanted to decrease the number of support calls I was getting, and one of the more common mistakes is they closed the work order while the tech was still assigned to that job, and the tech hadn't clicked on job complete before they closed the work order. The problem is that because he hadn't gone job complete, according to the data, he's still on site, which means he cannot go to his next job because he hasn't finished the first job. So I was getting support calls saying, hey, can you put this tech back on that work order or take him off the work order so that he can go on to his next job. So what I did was I created a option for the service admin where they can then find the mechanic, hit continue, and it will automatically tell them what the current status of that tech, and if there's an error in his status, it will fix it for them. So I just kind of automated that tech support portion of it, and then gave them the ability to run that. So this is the, so like I'm saying, that they've got their timesheets in here.
It's alleviating so much paper that we don't have to print all our service reports anymore. It's all right here. It also ties into our dispatch. If parts are on back order, our dispatch module in SoftBase is color-coded. As soon as they're received, it's color-coded, and it's color-coded on the text slip as well. So everything is integrated, so the tech can say, hey, the parts are here, how come, can you schedule me back to finish that repair?
What are
you looking for?
So these, this is where I would administer the workbenches from. So these are more the administrative tools behind it. I can set up the individual user profile and that kind of thing. So the actual administration, the setup, it's all done from a web browser. It's fairly straightforward once you kind of know where everything is.
All of our technicians send their estimate requests to one service writer in the Lower Mainland. So we have technicians, as soon as they put in their what used to be called a green sheet, because they actually fill out a green parts request and they rate the story as to what they need to do an estimate. That now comes electronically as soon as they say estimate request, estimate required. The paperwork automatically, our service writer just has to bring up any new estimate request, and he starts working on it while the tech is still on site. So this is what he sees, double clicks into it, and the parts are there, the labor, there's supposed to be a story, there's the work order number so they can bring up the work order number, and off we go. So we now only have one service writer, where before our parts and service sales reps used to do estimates, but we've got about 6 technicians and one service writer because the paperwork comes in so quickly and efficiently.
And then I've given the parts department a button for flagged parts. This is a quick show for them, all the work orders currently that have parts flagged for removal, so they don't have to go through and try and track down, well, what work orders do I need to do? When they have the time, they can just sit down, go through this list quickly, and just remove the parts off them.
Yeah, if it was in their van, the technician's van inventory, they would just remove it. If they're waiting for it, they know to say, hey, where's that filter or whatever it was that you're returning.
Any questions from the field, folks? This is Josh Cranfield here with Catavolt, and I think if there's no more questions right away, we'll just close it up, and I'll have a statement or two, and then we can go from there.
I've got one question. In terms of if you could program it for the technician to open up their own work orders, is that possible or would it be easy to do?
Oh, it's easy to do. Catavolt is more than capable of doing that. The invoicing software that we use is soft-based. It's SQL-based. So as far as ability to do that, yes, it's easy to do. As far as wanting to do that, we decided not to do that, strictly for quality control. We would never send a tech to a job without him being dispatched on that job, so we didn't see a need for the tech to be able to create his own work orders.
This is Brian with MasonLift. We investigated this further, and soft-based, if you're on a soft-based platform, soft-based also doesn't have an API to allow a creation of a work order into soft-based from the tablet. So,
yeah, so all you would do is create either a SQL procedure. You could do that from Catavolt. Let me just go here. I'm going to go back to my data objects here. So let's quickly show you, how you can handle that from here. So within Catavolt, you can, program certain actions in. You can add a part, and I don't know if you can read that or not. Oh, it's a little small to read.
Consider it all read and memorized.
Okay. But yeah, so you're able to either have the procedure scripted out on Catavolt itself, or you can write a procedure within on your SQL server, and then just call that procedure from Catavolt. That would then create the next work order. It's just like this exact same way I'm creating the labor entries. SoftBase doesn't have an external API to create labor entries, but that I know of, they might. I don't use SoftBase Mode at all, so I could be wrong on that. But so I've had to write my own, script that just looks at, that customer, what are his sales codes, what are the accounting fields for that sales code, and that kind of thing. And what I did a lot of was for the last 15 years, I've done a lot of running SQL traces just to see what SoftBase does in the background. When you click on this, what does it do? When you click on that, what does it do? And then I just replicate those processes through my own procedures. As far as creating a work order itself, it's, from a programming standpoint, it's fairly straightforward. You just look at, what the last created work order number is, and then you pull all the relevant, fields for the sales code that they're assigning, and then just populate those fields. There's within SoftBase, there's no obscure unique ID that has to be created. Like our CRM has an obscure record ID that has to be manually created before an entry can be created in the table. SoftBase doesn't have that. Any of the record IDs are automatically just populated from SQL, so you don't have a lot of the obstacles that you would using other methods.